Hi and welcome to Complete Beginners How to Use a Sewing Machine. So we're going to make a skirt and it's going to be beautiful, but before we do that, if you've never used a sewing machine before, here are some pointers of how to do it. Firstly, do not be scared. It's just a machine. It's not scary like a car, although it doesn't have a pedal, but apart from that, there isn't much similarity. So basically, all you're going to need for this is you're going to need any type of sewing machine. I'll run through, I've actually got 3 different types of sewing machine here. I'll run through each type with you just because they're all a little bit different, but it's the same, sort of. Just so that you can see something that looks a bit like the one you have in front of you. You only need 1 sewing machine. It's just me that's got the 3. You'll need some thread. It doesn't matter what type. Cotton breaks, so something that's not cotton is good. This is a rayon thread that's really nice because it's brushed, and it's really strong, but it looks like cotton. It's called Moon thread and it's very reasonably priced. I love this stuff because there's loads of nice different colours. Big fan of the Moon thread. Thank you, Coats, for that. So any sort of thread, a small pair of scissors, because if you have your big scissors, they'll get in the way of just snipping threads. Another thing you might need further into our sewing journey is a stitch ripper. It's not imperative, but this is a good one. Message me if you want to know where to get these, because I could probably sell them on the website actually. These are really nice. They've got a nice big rubber handle and they come in different colours. A lot of them look a bit like this. I think I've got really big hands or something. I find these quite hard to use. And then you'll always get one with your sewing machine for free, and it always looks a bit like this, and then you sort of do that, and then you do that, and you can use it like that. It's a clever idea, but you can't really get enough purchase on that handle because it's tiny. So you might want to invest a whole £1 or something into something a bit snazzier like that. Okay, so we've got thread, a sewing machine, some little scissors, and potentially a stitch ripper in case we make mistakes. We'll also need some spare fabric to play with. You should have some spare fabric left over from when we were cutting out the skirt pattern pieces, or you might just have some fabric lying around. It doesn't matter, any fabric will do. Preferably something a bit solid to begin with. I've got a bit of, what have I got here? I've got a bit of denim. I've got some normal thick denim, and I've also got some stretchy denim. If you have got something stretchy with a bit of stretch in it, don't start with that. We're going to come to that a little bit later on. But it's quite good to practice with both before you start making your skirt, so that you can see exactly how your sewing machine handles these sorts of things. Okay. So I'm going to start with the tiny sewing machine to begin with, because it's the most basic. So it's the easiest to show you. It's less scary than this one and this one, which are a little bit like spaceships when you look at them like that. So this one, all sewing machines work on the same basic principle, that you've got a top thread that comes down here through the needle and goes up and down, and a bottom thread. Now this is really useful because it's got a little see-through thing, so we can see where the bottom thread goes. And basically the thread comes down really, really fast, up and down, and it loops around the bottom thread to make a little knot, and then it goes up again, and that's what ties the 2 pieces of fabric together. Is you've got the bottom thread looping with the top thread. They meet, they part, they meet, they part, and it happens really, really fast. So that is how this machine works. Now I've had to put a little light here because it's so basic, it doesn't have a light. Now these ones have lovely big lights so you can see what you're doing, but this one does not, so I've had to add a light there. So first of all, we have top thread and we have what we call bobbin thread, which is the bottom thread. Now what we need to do is put some thread in this. Now all sewing machines will come, if they're brand new, they'll come with a bobbin, but it won't have any thread on it. If you've borrowed someone's sewing machine, hopefully they've threaded your bobbin for you, but we'll just cover that to begin with because that's quite useful. Let's start with white thread. So we get the thread and we put it on whatever spool you've got there, and we take it, and we put it through, just goes around there. It potentially just goes around there actually. Then you put your thread through the little hole in the top of your bobbin and pop it on. There should be a little place where the bobbin sits. Now you pull it not too tight, but so that it's not slack, and then you move it over, and that should engage the bobbin winding mechanism. Then you find your foot pedal and you gently press that, and as you can see, that's made that start to wind up. So I'm just going to cut the top bit, we don't need that. So if you just put your foot right down on the pedal and keep going. Now when the bobbin gets full, you'll see it just sort of stops turning like that. It won't turn anymore, it's having a go. So all you have to do is click it back to the left. So we clicked it right to engage the bobbin winding, just click it back to the left, and that stops the bobbin winding. Then we can pull it off and cut it. Oop. What was I saying about sharp scissors? So here is our wound bobbin thread. Now, for some reason, you always have to have the bobbin thread off to the left side like that when you pop it in. So with this one, you pop the bobbin in there, you pull, you see that metal thing here? You pull the thread under that little metal lever there, as far as it'll go, and then I think you just leave it there. I think that's the extent of that bobbin for now. We'll come back to that. Now this one is a little bit more complicated because you've actually got two different thread spools here. So this is the main thread spool, and you'll just pop your thread in there. Oops. Butterfingers. And you can either use the main thread that you're using as a top thread, or you can have a completely different dedicated bobbin thread that you can keep here, and you can wind that one onto the bobbin. You've got options. I think we'll just use the main thread for now, but it's nice to have a secondary colour. I'll explain that later, why you might use a different colour on the bottom of your fabric to the top of your fabric. It can be quite useful. So this goes in here. The lovely thing about Brother machines, which I cannot thank them enough, and especially their overlooker, is there is always a really clear diagram as to what to do. So what you'd do is you would, I haven't got a spare bobbin for that, but and this one's got loads of thread on it, thank goodness. So what you would do is you would just get your bobbin, and the same thing, you put the thread into the hole, you pop it on there, and then again, instead of moving the bobbin winder, you just move that little catch, and as soon as you do that, this comes up and you just click start and it winds it, you see, and then stop, and then click it back and it's out of bobbin winding mode. Now this bobbin case you load slightly differently, but again, because it's Brother, it's got a little diagram which I find very helpful. So you've got that pops in there, and you follow the arrow with your thread, and it actually has a little loop that goes around there, and then you cut it, you pull it on there, hold the bobbin, pull it on there, and that is loaded. It's really, really clever how it just takes it and cuts it to the right length and everything, and you just are done. Bingo. This is a similar mechanism, but it's a little bit more complicated as to how you thread it. It goes through these, and then this is a moving bobbin winder, so you push that to there and it brings up the thing, and then you start and stop by just pressing the button on the screen, and then you can click it back and that goes away. You've also got, I like this, you've got a little thread cutter there and a spare bobbin winding spool if you need it, but it's out of the way because it's not used very often, so that's a little bit neater, but it's the same idea. This one's a bit different still. It's a slightly different bobbin. It's a little bit more like the first one in that it doesn't have as many instructions, but you still put your thread coming out to the left, pop your bobbin in the hole. Oops. And then there's a little, can you see the little metal thing? You want to pop it between those two bits of metal. Probably the fiddliest one, this one. And then pull till it, there's like a click, and it takes it into a little separate place in there, a little channel. And then you take it round there, and then you take it round there, and that cuts it there to the right length. And then there. So any of those three combinations is probably very similar to how to pop your bobbin in. And the bobbin is the hardest part. Once you've done the bobbin, it's easy from there. So now we need to thread the machine proper. So we need the top thread to be sorted. This is usually easier than it looks. So this one, there are some arrows. Look, there's an arrow going down and then one coming back up and round. So always starts on the right, goes down underneath something. There's a nicely labelled bit there. And then this one you thread through there, down, and then we catch the thread in the front of there somehow. I did it. Now with this one you have to thread your needle manually, so you make sure that you've got a non-scraggy end, because if you've got a scraggy end you'll be here for hours. So, and since this is one of the hardest parts of using a sewing machine, let's do it right. So you need to pop that through the hole. It helps if you've got some glasses on. If you really can't see that tiny hole, then like me, get a little cheap magnifying glass, because that, oh, there we go. And then, oops, go back. Now that is a bit of a faff, but if you're just borrowing someone else's sewing machine and it's not a permanent situation, that's fine. And then all you need to do is find the lever here that lifts up, and then just push your thread and your bobbin thread to the back, and we are ready to go. This machine threads in a similar way, but it's got a bit more ease to it. So this thread goes through here. Again, we've got a diagram. 1, 2, 3 must be down here. Look, there's 3 there. And then I'm just going to raise the back foot. So 4, 5 must be here somewhere, and then 6 you go through there. Okay, now this is really nice because this has an automatic threader. So all you do here is you thread this through number 7 like that, and then you cut it on the little cutter here, so it's exactly the right length. And then here is a needle threading button. Press that, and look, it's threaded the needle. It probably helps if you just give it a little tug, and then you pop the thread behind there. But that does make it much easier, especially when you're doing embroidery on this machine. It threads it for you. It just makes it so much quicker. Don't go out and spend tons of money right now because you want one that's got a button that threads. There are other ways of doing it. So this is a semi-automatic needle threader. It doesn't, you don't just press the button and it's threaded, but it does have a device. I quite like this, but it takes a few goes to get the hang of, and I can't say I've quite got the hang of this yet. This is Michelle, my special edition faff. I call her Michelle because she's Michelle Faffer. Now what you do is there's a little button here that you push down, and that brings your needle threading device. You have to put one finger on there, and then you have to put, you see it is a bit faffy, and then you can put your thread around there and then through the device, so you're manually doing this, and then you just let go. And the idea is it has threaded it, only slightly, but it has threaded it. So you just pull it through. That is a lot easier than the manual way because it's done most of the work for you, but it's a little bit faffier, and you have to, but you have to get the hang of that. So so there's 3 ways of doing it. You can either have the completely thread your own needle, the press the button or there's a lever that does it sort of for you. Okay, so we've got our top thread and our bottom thread, and what do we do now? It's easy from there. That's the hardest bit. So putting the bobbin thread is probably the hardest bit because it's a bit faffy and it takes a bit of getting used to. But once you've got used to that, you won't think about it. You'll do it in your sleep. The top thread, again, once it's threaded, you just leave it in. So do not be put off by those 2 steps of threading your machine, because once it's done, and you can leave it threaded and it's fine. Okay? So let's sew. This is the fun bit. So what we want to do is we want to put a piece of fabric in the machine and make sure that your foot, this is your foot, is in the up position. Because if it's in the down position, then you won't be able to get any fabric in. It won't work. So find the little lever. Mine's there, look. This one has a lever at the back here. And then the one at the end just has a button. There's no actual lever. There's just a button, the up and down button. Now we want to start with a straight stitch. So a lot of sewing machines have this system where you just pick your stitch on a diagram and then you turn it. I think we'll start with this one. No, we'll start with B. Start with B. B is there. And that's the sort of length of the stitch. And then you can do zigzags and that sort of thing. Now the digital ones, you've got a system where you just pick your stitch and you click on it, and you can change the length and you can change the width as you go along. And it's the same on here, but it's a bit more difficult to work out how that works. It took me a while. But this, again, Brother is a very straightforward way of seeing things. And some of the Brothers have a very straightforward diagram like this, that you just go, right, that's what I want. Turn the knob, off we go. Now this is the thread tension. Generally leave it where it is. If we have problems with thread tension, then we will adjust. But try not to mess with your tensions before you start. So pop your fabric into the gap between the sewing machine and the foot. Now fingers must not go under the needle. If you put fingers under the needle, I know that sounds really obvious, but just keep them out of the way. So the way that a sewing machine works, it's really simple. You've got your top thread, you've got your bottom thread in your bobbin, and then you don't have to push the fabric through or it will all get crumpled. What you've got is you've got these little grippy things here that move the fabric. Let me just drop that. So they move the fabric through the machine. So when you press that button, you can see them at the bottom there. They are moving forwards and backwards. They're dragging the fabric through, so you don't have to push it. So what we do is we pop the fabric, we make sure the foot is up. So you either need to press the foot button or pull that one up. And we pop the fabric in between like that, in the corner there, and then we drop the foot. So we either press the button at the back to get that down, or there's a foot button. Now, the needle should be up at this point. All we need to do is press the button on the floor, press the foot pedal, and we should be sewing. There we go. Now, the bit that you have to do is not this. The bit that you have to do is to just try and keep it as straight as possible. Now, the best way to do this is to follow the line of the edge of your foot. The edge of your foot should be nice and straight. So you should decide on a distance, or you could use one of these marks on here on the base plate. And you think, right, the edge of the fabric is straight, the edge of this is straight. I want to line those up. And off you go. And then you should have straight stitches. Okay. Now, to finish your row of stitches, you want to get your needle up, either by using the little knob on the end here, or by pressing the needle up button. And you want to get your foot up. like that. Now then you need to do pull and cut, or you've got a cut button which does it for you. Okay, so have a little go at sewing fabric in, foot down, needle down, press the button on the floor. Have a go at that. There's me using my cut button and foot up. Have a go at that and see how you get on. So next, grab some curved fabric and see how you get on following the curved edge slightly, and see if you can manage that. It's not as easy as it looks because your sewing machine wants to go in a straight line. So we're going to give that a go. It's the wrong way around. So we'll start at this end, foot down, needle down, off we go. So what we're doing is we're just slightly, we're not pushing the fabric through, but we're just slightly guiding it around the curve like that. Slight guiding. So we don't want this bit to be all rumpled. So we just want to give that a little bit of a tug, but not too tight. And then we don't want to be pushing it that way either. So we just want to maintain a slight tension here with the fabric. And just let the machine pull the fabric through. And then stop, cut, and then foot up. And look, you've done a curved line. Ta-da! Next, we're going to practice going round corners. That's a fun game. So you start in this corner here, foot down, needle down. And we're going to go along this edge and along that edge. So off we go in a straight line to, we can slow, if you just press less on the foot, you should be able to go a bit slower to about there. Make sure your needle's down. If it's not down when it stops, press your needle button. So you want needle down, but you want foot up. Turn your fabric 90 degrees, foot down, go again. Stop. That should be about right. So needle down, foot up, turn, foot down, off you go. There you go. And that is how it is really easy to sew around the edge of something, especially if it's got corners, because corners are really easy. Now you have a go and see if you like corners or you like curves or you just like sewing in a straight line. See how you go. Have a little play. Next, grab a piece of fabric that's slightly stretchy, not too stretchy because it'll just eat it. Now the problem with the feed dogs is they're really, really vicious. So if you have anything too stretchy, they'll just eat it. So you want something that's just a bit stretchy, like I've got this denim here that's got a bit of stretch in it. So just pop that in there, foot down, needle down. And then we're just going to follow this curve around. But I'm not going to pull this too tight because if I do that, it'll look horrible. And I'm not going to let it too slack like that. So just work on having a sort of, not sure what happened there, a sort of slightly pulled tight taut, I suppose, but not too taut, just as the stretchy fabric goes through. And stop. So there we go. We've got, why is that not cutting? See what's happened there is the bit where I pulled the fabric really tight, the stitches look all wrong. And then the bit where I didn't, the stitches look perfect. But what happened here is where I pulled it, the stitches are all out and wonky and wrong. In fact, it all looks a bit wrong. So just don't pull any stretch fabric too much. And have a practice with that. So, are we ready now? Have we mastered sewing in a straight line, sewing in a curve and turning corners? Because they're very simple, as long as you remember needle down, foot up, turn, and then foot down, and then go. Okay, so what we need to do now is we've got 2 bits of fabric and we want to stitch them together. Now, let's have a go. Let's see how we go stitching these random bits of fabric together. So I've got these 2, I've put them together like that. Let's see what happens. Foot down, needle down, sew in a straight line. What's going on there? So if you look at this, what have we done? We've stitched them together, but the seam looks horrible where the fabric has been stitched together. What we should have done is done the other way around, because if you look on the back, that actually looks quite nice, but that's the back. So what we always do when we stitch fabric together, unless told otherwise, and it very rarely happens this, unless you're doing something called French seams, in fact you never do it. So what you do is you always get your fabric right sides together. Everything you sew is right sides together. So you've got your good sides on the inside, and then you've got your wrong sides on the outside. So if we do that, foot down, needle down, stitch. Now, this, when we open it out, we have a beautiful seam. It looks like one piece of fabric. If we look on the back, there's the hidden seam. It's on the back. So every single thing we do, when we make our skirt, when we make dresses, when we make pillowcases, everything we do, we will do right sides together. So you have a go at sewing your fabric with the right sides together. Sometimes it's quite difficult to find the right side. Here's some fabric I was making a jumpsuit out of, and I think that that is the right side on the inside, but it's really hard to tell. See if you can have a go at that. So basically, we have covered all the things you need to know to use a sewing machine. All you need to do is switch it on, pop some thread in the top, pop some bobbin thread in, and then put your fabric in, put your foot down, put your needle down, go, press your foot, and off we go. And just practice sewing little bits of fabric together, and you should be having fun. It's about having fun. There's something really meditative about sitting at a sewing machine and just sewing bits of fabric together. Sadly, most of dressmaking isn't sitting at the sewing machine sewing bits of fabric together. If you want to just sit at a sewing machine all day sewing bits of fabric together, maybe quilting is for you, because quilting is sewing bits of fabric together and then making a giant quilt. I actually got into sewing because I needed to make some seat covers when my children were really young, and a neighbour lent me her old sewing machine. It was a really good one, but it was really old. And I just used it to sew loads and loads of old bits of clothes together because I didn't have any fabric and I was nowhere near a fabric shop. We were out in the sticks in Spain. And I just made seat covers, and then I made some curtains out of all my old clothes. So if you want to sit and have a play for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 hours, just have a go with the sewing machine you've got in front of you and sew things together. You can have a go and you'll see really good results really quickly. As long as you sew in a straight line, then you've got a really lovely thing. So all we're going to do next is we're going to have a go at machine embroidery, which is optional. So if that's not for you, then ignore the next video and then come back to the one after that, and we're going to make the skirt. Now the sewing bit of the skirt is the final bit, and it's really straightforward. That's why we've chosen the skirt, and you should be able to do it. Just have a little practice now, and then you should be able to make the skirt really easily from here. It's a simple skirt, it's a flattering skirt, and it's going to look lovely. So come back for that video, and I'll see you then.